all go to there.
I'll go there.
I'm gonna tag
Mr. Delzell.
I'll tag him on this, and then it says we're live here. All right, there we go. I wish it would just automatically tag it, but
the scoreboard one.
I wish it would.
Are you doing that, or you want me to do it?
I'm doing it on mine. You can do it.
Okay.
I'll tag Coach D too as well.
All right. Sounds good.
Then, let's see. And I'm gonna post a picture in here from here, so you guys, it's probably gonna pop up here.
All right.
If it'll let me post a picture in here from here, so you guys, it's probably no, it's not gonna let me.
Oh, there's your delay in case you need to press the bleep button.
I know.
I don't language.
We don't have one of those.
Well, my mom might be watching, so I gotta keep it
she is.
I gotta keep it clean. Grandma Judy's on there.
Coyd, if I send this to your wife, will she post it in here?
Yeah, she can.
I said, can you post this to the comments section? I have to. I can't not have this. I just told her it won't let me. No, not that one. What am I doing?
Oh, geez. I can't wait to see what pops up from your photo albums.
Oh, no, it wasn't a bad one.
This is from Chad's teaching days.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Yeah, this is a good one, though. God, I just don't know why it won't let me.
Right.
I don't know. It won't let me. Hopefully she'll get it.
Yeah, she does. She does. Now we can put it on the page later.
All right. Yeah. Whenever you want to roll. I think we've already got 20 people on.
Yeah, let's do it. You ready, Mr. Delzell?
I'm ready.
All right. All right. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. This is episode number 5. We have special guest Chad Delzell with us today. He's going to be sharing some insight from the topics that we have, kind of a variety of different topics tonight that we're going to focus on, and really looking forward to the show. First, shout out real quick. Shout out to AdCraft Printwear in Clinton, Iowa. If you follow us and like our page, you see that we have some shirts available. Beyond the Scoreboard shirts. If anybody would like one, let me or JP know and we can hook you up. We should have that order in early this week, coming week. We're getting a limited supply of shirts to start, and then we're going to order some more. Great deal, $10 only for a shirt. So let us know and we can hook you up. And again, shout out AdCraft for sponsoring us and hooking us up with some sweet gear.
They are the best. No question.
Yeah, they're good. All right. So, Mr. Delzell, why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers here? I know a lot of people know you, but kind of just give a quick background on yourself, and then we'll get into the talk here.
Yeah, I don't even know what background would be important to having me on this podcast, but I will tell you this: I had an opportunity to be on Pat McAfee's podcast, and I had to decline that for this opportunity. But this is certainly the world-renowned podcast these days. So I'm happy to be on. But I just appreciate you having me on. Jeremy will probably tell you here soon. I spent my early days of my career as a teacher and a coach, 5th grade teacher, and coached a couple of different sports, and then happened to get out of teaching and jumped into the pharmaceutical industry. And I've been doing that for 20 some years now, but still stayed pretty active with youth sports and coaching and, that kind of stuff. So that, I guess, is what brings me here. Like I said, I don't know. We'll see.
No, I think kind of Stina and I's reasoning in having you on, for one, we know you can keep a conversation going. Two, we kind of wanted kind of like that parent perspective, and you've had two. We'll get into Caleb and Mike as we go on here, but you've had two really good athletes come through, and kind of how all that's gone on as they progress there. Tyler Redmond said you forgot about your male modeling career. I wouldn't want to see any of that. But
Hanes underwear or what? Yeah.
Hopefully that was a long time ago. But
I always say I'm a before model in a weight loss ad, not the after.
Come on.
Tyler Redmond's on. Oh, brother, here we go.
We got Tanner Weber. He said the man. Are you seeing the comments? Can you see him?
No, I don't think I can see any.
All right. So Tanner Weber said the man, the myth, the legend, Chad Delzell, and then Sean Lawrence, Chadillac, and
Chadillac,
emoji
baby,
that I can't read because my eyes are going to crap. But yeah, welcome. Thanks for coming on with us, Chad. And
no, thanks for having me. I mean that sincerely. I appreciate it.
All right. So we obviously had a week off last week because of the Super Bowl. So we'll start with diving into that real quick. Kind of get reactions to that, and all what we thought of the Super Bowl. So Stinda, you start us off. Give us thoughts on this. Your Chiefs winning the Super Bowl.
No, come on. Listen, I don't know. It was honestly, I wasn't really surprised. However, I just felt like the first half, what do you guys think? The Niners were all in the first half, and the second half, it was like they were playing not to lose. Like it was just like look at that first drive of the game. Drive down. I know you have a fumble, but they moved the ball all over the Chiefs defense. And then that second half, it was like non-existent. Like they were just playing like we don't want to give up this lead. We don't want to lose. And it's almost like with Pat Mahomes, even though I don't like him, that's a guy you really, if he's down, he probably plays best when he's down. So I don't know. I kind of feel at the end of the game, I do think there were some calls at the end of that game, that overtime, that were blatantly obvious. The holding call on the last play of the game, which, if you know the rules, if they would have called it wasn't holding, it was a lineman downfield. Yeah. He was down like 5 yards downfield, and they didn't call it. I think it ends up being a runoff by the clock because they had 9 seconds left. The game would have been over. And I also think there was a holding call on that as well.
Game wouldn't have been over because of the new rule, the new OT rule.
Was that? See, that's what I was trying.
So that was the other issue. So, the OT rule was that the time doesn't matter, so you can finish out your possession. So if the time runs out and you still have possession of the ball, you keep playing until you either turn it over on downs, turnover, or miss a field goal.
Yeah, that was so
that wouldn't have mattered. That rule.
The overtime was great, and it was so interesting to me. I was so ill prepared for that, so uneducated on the overtime rules for the playoffs. Luckily, Coach Coit, I was in a room full of football experts, so I just listened to them. I leaned on their expertise at our Super Bowl bash. But what I love, Jeremy, is you bring up something that I always wonder about. So the game looked different from the first half to the second half, and OT even looked different. And there's this concept that I wonder about all the time. Like, well, the Chiefs made the better adjustments. I wonder how many adjustments are actually made, or if it's, to your point, Jeremy, like some teams just come out and change their philosophy and play differently, whether it's playing not to lose instead of playing to win, or changing the aggressiveness. I'm always curious about that. But for me, as an average fan, it was a great game. It lived up to all the hype, and I didn't want it to end, so overtime was great for me.
You're a Niners fan?
No.
Oh,
I was leaning heavily on the Niners winning that for some reason, but I don't know why.
Well, look at their defense. Man, if you stack them up offensively, defensively, we've talked about this, Coy. Look at the Niners offense stacked from offensive line, running back, skill position, and then look at their defense. And I even thought in the second half, like Fred Warner, it was a bummer when Dre Greenlaw went out.
Yeah,
that was, and I will say that was, if you watched it when that happened, what did Mahomes do? He started going after that replacement linebacker. He was throwing like those out routes that was making him try to cover.
Did you see the stats on that? Or I don't remember what the stat was, but they targeted him 8 times and there's 8 completions or whatever. Like, ooh.
So They did the right. I mean, I guess there you go after the weak link there, and you got Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, probably two of the best of what they do. And if you're a good quarterback, that's what Tom Brady would do. He'd exploit, like, hey, go after the guy that that doesn't have the experience. So all in all, it was like you said, like you both said, it lived up to the hype. But I just hate seeing the Chiefs win. I just don't like them. I don't know why. I just don't like them, and I don't. So
nobody likes winners.
Yeah, exactly. They've gotten to that point.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, I don't really hate them, but people just get tired of winners, like when the Patriots are winning all their Super Bowls, but they're good, man. Mahomes, he's just a winner. Kelsey turned it on in the second half, and the Chiefs defense is really what had really carried them all year. I think, I mean, obviously their offense is good too, but having a defense like they had really helped them obviously take the championship. But back to that overtime rule real quick. So I was sick this week, so I watched all kinds of sports podcasts and everything. So it was wild to me that a lot of people were saying how prepared the Chiefs were about that new rule, the new overtime playoff rule, and how the 49ers were so ill prepared. Like the 49ers had no idea the rules, and then the Chiefs said, yeah, every playoff week we went over at least 2 times, what we would do in the situation and what happens, all this, and then they just don't know. I know at our party, Chad, Ryan Kincaid, he immediately, when the 49ers took the ball, he's like, why are they taking the ball? These rules are like that now. I'm like, hey, that's a good point. I initially I was just like, yeah, they should take the ball, but then all the new rules and everything, and I'm like, well, yeah, they should definitely not take the ball. But yeah, just crazy how to me, an NFL coach, and I know Shanahan's taking a lot of heat for this, but how he just didn't, I mean, he know the rule, I guess, or wasn't prepared for it. And I don't know, just interesting thought there, I think. So
and they still could have called holding though. I mean, there's like on that last one, that was blatantly.
Listen,
I mean, it was bad.
You go on social media, you can get swept away in all the calls and no calls.
Yeah, and you could call hold on every single play if you wanted to in a football game. Let's be real.
I know that. I know we talked. I know. I don't know.
You're blaming the refs, and don't be that
I ain't
guy.
blaming the ref. I'm just saying I'd like to see more consistency all around. Yeah. That would be nice.
Well, the other stat I read that in the last 3 Super Bowls, the Chiefs have been called for 0 holds or something like that. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's wild, but the sad thing is that there's no more football.
Yeah.
And we have to wait. We'll have like XFL, USFL, or whatever coming out soon. Right? I'll watch a little bit of that, but that's a little harder to watch. But it's football, so I watch it every once in a while. But any other thoughts on the Super Bowl before we move on? No. All right. All right. So we are going to get into Caitlin Clark. Obviously, everybody knows who she is. She became the all-time NCAA scoring leader in women's college basketball, passing Kelsey Plum's record. We'll try to have accurate stats, unlike Cheryl Swoops had on the podcast with Arenas, but
or even more recently, Jay Williams, right? He just came out.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Jay Williams, yeah, he got roasted. I was watching that live when he said that, but anyway, she achieved it in 13 fewer games than Kelsey Plum did. I'm gonna be honest, like I'm not an Iowa fan for one. I'm a big Illinois fan, so and I don't watch a ton of women's basketball either, but I will be honest that she's obviously an awesome basketball player and has really honestly changed the women's game, I think, for probably the better. What are your guys' thoughts on Caitlin Clark and kind of how she's changed how college basketball for women and even like girls at a young age and things like that?
Coach D, you hit on because you coached hoops for a long time, so even those boys. I mean, you got to. I don't watch a lot of basketball anymore, so.
Well, unfortunately, I don't watch a lot of women's basketball either, but I mean, I can recognize that she's an unbelievable scoring machine. And I think more importantly is what Coach Coit is saying is she certainly elevated the game. She, among other star players as well. But she's also elevated the controversy and drama that can come along with that kind of stuff. We just got done talking about the Chiefs, and they're at a point where their success is polarizing. So you either kind of love them or you hate them. And now women's basketball has been elevated to the point where now we've got these statements that other stars or other former players are making, and they create this drama and controversy, and it's good and bad. I mean, we live in a day and age where, the squeakier the wheel, the more attention they get. And, like we're just talking about Jay Williams and the comment he just made, and Cheryl Swoops and her comment. You wonder, sometimes, do they care if the attention they gain from it is positive or negative, because it's attention overall? But certainly Caitlin Clark is just having an incredible career, unbelievable season. It's a scoring machine. But unfortunately, I'm with the rest of you guys. I don't watch a ton of women's basketball, although I've watched more. Stacy's into these Hawkeyes hook, line, and sinker. She supported some of their NIL deals by buying T-shirts and this and that.
Yeah.
So we watch them together sometimes when we can catch the games, and they certainly are. The way they pack a gym is exciting for them.
I've never seen her. I've never watched her play until the other night. She broke that scoring record, and I watched the whole game. And when I saw her hit that, that three, well, first off, just her scoring like 8 points in like 30 seconds. Then she just drops a three like Steph Curry land. I was like, and then
she does that all the time,
dude. Yeah. I'm with you guys. Like, give her a props. I mean, to watch somebody shoot the ball from that range and be 4 or 5 feet behind the 3-point line, it's like, I mean, she's hitting that all day, and she didn't even care. She just pull up and put it down, and she's a pretty good facilitator too. She had quite a few assists too in that first half, where good passing. It's like, it wasn't like she just chucking up shots. It's like she took good shots, and then when she had the opportunities to pass off and dish out, she did. So again, I don't watch it. I honestly, that's probably the first girls game or first college I've watched in years. But after watching it, I was like, man, the girl can ball, and that's probably why she's making that $3 million right now in college. Yeah. It's like well earned.
Yeah, I think I don't have her stats off my top of my on sheet or anything, but I know she's averaging like 32 a game and 8+ assists a game, which is number 1 in the nation, I'm pretty sure too. But yeah, she's a good passer too, and she makes her team better as well. And she's a very good player. So let's talk. I don't. JP, you probably didn't. Did you hear what Jay Williams said about her?
What did you say about winning the championship?
Yeah, about how he literally would not say in the sentence that she's a great player because she has not won a championship yet. So I was going to ask that question, and I'm glad Chad brought it up. But like, what is your guys' argument with that? So do you like she's obviously going to be the top college basketball player maybe ever, and I mean, based off her scoring and even her passing ability and all that. So how can you, if she never wins a championship, you're still going to consider her great, right? Like where is that? How do you draw that line, I guess is my question.
Yeah. So for me, just that specific question, I completely disagree with Jay Williams. And I think in any sport, you can end up being great without a world championship or a national championship, only because they're so difficult to get. They really are. And whenever I have these conversations, whether it's with Ben Irwin or anybody else, we always talk about, sometimes at the end of the season, it just goes to the hottest team. And you're not always going to be a part of that. And then, of course, the team sports, you have so many people around you that you have to count on as well. And so I completely disagree with Jay Williams's assessment that you need, to be great, you need to have a national championship or even a world championship. But I will lump this in with whether it's Jay Williams or Cheryl Swoops. If they just would have like wordsmithed a little bit better, they were driving home some decent points that need to be brought up in the world of sports. Like, look, I've got a kid that's going to benefit from the COVID year as far as eligibility, and records are going to be broken. Hers isn't going to be broken because of the extra year, the COVID year, but there are things that are going to happen because of that. So if Cheryl Swoops would have just, kind of put her argument out there a little bit differently and not, like you said, had misleading facts or incorrect facts, she could have made a decent argument. And Jay Williams started that way. He's like, hey, just from where I'm from, he always kind of pretends like he's one of the greatest of all time. Blah, blah, blah.
I can't stand him.
Yeah, he said something about Duke players recently, like you always pretend as you get older, you always think you were better and tougher than what you really were. And so I hear that kind of stuff a lot. But again, if he would have just, like, you nailed it, Coy, he just wouldn't use that word great. That's the only thing he wouldn't, he said she's a scoring machine. She's unbelievable at what she does. Well, just say she's great then. That's the next step. It's no big deal. You can say she's great without a national championship.
You could name hundreds of great athletes in any sport that don't have championships. You know what I mean? And everyone's still going to consider them great.
And I think it was Mike Dunlap tweeted something perfect too, is there's a ton of average dudes on a national championship team too that just fit a perfect role. So what are you going to say? Well, this guy has a national championship or this female has a national championship, but they're great just because they have it. That's unfair too.
Yeah. It is. And, like Williams, I've listened to him before talk about like the Jordan LeBron debate, and that's where, and again, I'm obviously biased because I'm a Jordan fan, but here's the thing. What did
I taught him well, Coy. I don't know. I didn't have much time with him, but I taught him well.
I mean, and here's the thing. Did he win a national championship didn't he play at Duke?
Dude,
I got to think about that. And I'm the diehard Duke fan.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember if he did or not either.
I don't know. I know he was a good player. I remember him being a good player, but like you said, it's like, I get it. He's in a different role because he's, he's a spectator now, a commentator. He's not playing, but it's like, bro, like you're on there talking about some girl who's literally writing history. And yet you're saying, like you said, he can't even put that in a sentence. It's like, dude, what were you? When you went to the NBA, you were nothing in the NBA. He played for the Bulls and who else? I mean, it's like, come on, man. Like, it's one thing if that's Michael Jordan talking. I might listen to that and be like, all right. I bet Michael Jordan doesn't say that about her. He
won 2001 national champion.
That's right. Okay.
Was he? Okay.
Back-to-back player of the year.
Good player. I mean,
he was good.
Be great. He'd be great.
Yeah, he'd be considered great for sure. And again, like he can have an argument about that. I love that about sports is, there are great superstars that didn't win world championships or national championships. And they have to live through that argument, and there's always a couple sides to every argument, but you can make that point without just avoiding that word great. That was kind of what I thought was the silly part, but.
Well, like Jeff Newman commented, he said like basketball, Charles Barkley, no rings.
Yeah, that's a classic one.
He is. And you look at like football, Dan Marino.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Dan Marino, who was it Jim Kelly for the Buffalo Bills? Yeah. You go to 4 Super Bowls, you don't win.
I just watched the special they have one on Netflix on their 4 losses. Yeah. Jim Kelly.
I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I know, if you're ever talking about the GOAT debate, that's probably a little bit different. When you talk the GOAT debate, because anybody whether it's GOAT in baseball, basketball, whatever sport, those people, if you're the GOAT, you've got to, obviously you've probably won some titles, MVPs, etc. But when you're just talking about, she's a great player, it could be the best of all time. Look at what she's doing. Nobody else is, like you said, who's ever going to break that record? They're probably not going to.
Hey, they're already talking about a girl at USC. I don't know. But
she's a freshman. She's averaging, I think, 30 some a game. I think maybe somewhere around there. She's got a bunch of points, but
man, that's like Coach D back in the day on the playground, man. Coach D's dunking. How many do you think you averaged when you were playing at recess?
God, I got to think about that. Recess was approximately 16 minutes long.
Yeah.
I was touching the ball 80 times at least. God, I don't know. I should have kept my stats for recess for sure. The better one, Jeremy, would be my all-time QB days. I mean, I don't know how you think Patrick Mahomes has some stats.
Bro, I'm telling you, remember when remember we had the backstops,
Yep.
the backstop. And I'm not kidding you that he'd take football. He would launch that sucker from North 3rd Street to what would that be? Not Pershing. It is Pershing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was 60 yards easy.
Yeah, right.
Yes, that had to be close to 60 yards.
See what you can do, Coit, when you're with 5th graders. You can really impress them.
What size? Well, you're using like a 5th grade size ball, though.
Yeah. One that you would.
That's not impressive.
You know what? I can't confirm or deny, but all I could say is that ball, everyone on they wanted him at quarterback. He was all-time QB, and he was like the god out there chucking that thing.
If I missed a kid that was open, I heard about it for the next 2 class periods after recess. Be like, I was wide open, waving my hands.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh man. Yeah, you had some skill between that. And like I said, I think on the court there, I don't know how many dunks. You were always shooting high percentage shots. So
8-foot rim, I was always dunking.
Yeah.
Get out there and all the kids are screaming dunk it. You can't let them down. I was 24 years old. 100 years ago.
Yep. I remember, as long as you didn't get and then we move on. But I remember the story when you bought new shoes. One time you bought some new shoes and we were playing out there and it started raining and you got them muddy. Oh. And you like quit in the middle of it and you went and stood under the thing and you're like, I'm like, Mr. D, what are you doing? You're like, Jer, I just bought these. I can't get them anymore. They're all dirty. And I'm like, we were all mad that he quit.
See the pressure I was under?
Yeah, geez. 5th grade students, huh?
Hey, Coit's got that going on too. And he's always impressing the kids at the high school.
I don't know about that. But
probably lifting them weights. You probably say, who can bench more?
No, most of the kids are stronger than I am. That's for sure. All right, before we move on here, we got a bunch of comments I'll throw out since Chad can't see them. Adam Birkin said we're coming out with the heavy hitters as far as guests. Puts Taylor Swift on new heights. Shame.
You gotta love Adam Birkin for sure.
What else? Zach Hudson, if anyone knows how to produce young stud athletes, it's Mr. Chad Delzell. David Murphy. Can Mr. Delzell share some of his knowledge on wrestling, both high school and college?
Yeah, Murph. He knows that I can.
Tanner Weber said Caitlin Clark was like a Chad Delzell in the early 2000s in the MDA tournament.
Yeah.
And
I probably shot that much. Whitey Caesar would have to take the ball from me.
Would you play with Whitey and then Carl Small?
So, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I played with Caesar Crane, which was always Whitey's team. And Malsey definitely was on that squad several times or other tournaments. But, once you get old enough and everybody starts having kids and things, you switch up who you got playing with you. But Carl was always a big part of that. I got some good Carl stories for you.
Dude, that guy's I love that guy. We had so much fun when I coached at Commands.
He's such a good basketball player. He's just such a good basketball player.
He had them he was just a elite defender.
Yeah.
Like he'd pick your pocket all day long.
Great passer, great elite defender.
Yeah. He's a baller, man. He could play.
Then one more comment. Travis Baker said Chad is a very vocal supporter and outspoken advocate of women's basketball.
Travis trying to bait me. He's just trying to bait me.
You did good. Good answer.
He's just trying to reel me in.
And then Juju is the girl, the next Caitlin Clark.
Is that who it is?
Yeah, Juju, I think it's Watkins, maybe. Juju, or
keep my eye on
it. Yeah. All right. So moving on here with Chad Delzell. So you obviously mentioned you were a teacher for 6 years, coached at different levels in football, basketball, girls, boys, all that. And so obviously you're now in a different profession. So we briefly mentioned this before we went live, but kind of talk about like what, I know because you're obviously a big sports guy, but and you were involved coaching like Mike and C when they were growing up too. But kind of talk about like what made you transition from teaching, coaching to getting the job to what you got now. Explain that to us, please.
Oh boy. Yeah. So I hope I don't ramble too much. I've had 25 years to craft this message as to why I left education and coaching to do what I do. But, truthfully, it's layered. There's a lot of reasons why. I think, I taught for 6 years. I coached all of those 6 years. I never was a varsity coach. I was, fresh off assistant for Al Lamus on the girls' side for a year. I was a fresh off assistant for Dale Trott. And I worked with Gary DeLacy and Randy Teemer as well. They integrated us at the fresh soft level into their varsity like you guys did at Comanche. And then I left that and went to middle school coaching, which Coach Coyd and I have talked about is a cool gig. The kids are still in learning mode and it's shorter seasons and it can be a lot of fun. So in the 6 years, that's what I did. In probably my 4th or 5th year of teaching, I started to wonder what else was out there. And I'm guessing the motivation for me was, there's some of it was just that I wanted to do something different. As simple as that. But there was some, negative things that pushed me out of education. And it's all the stuff that's still tough today. It's unfortunately you just have a handful of parents that can really ruin things. And it's really a small number. Jeremy, I think will vouch for this, that the parents we had at Horace Mann back in those days were fantastic, including his own mom. She was just a wonderful lady, and we had a lot of good ones, but gosh, the outspoken few that can be tough to deal with can really make it such a challenging profession. And then personally for me, there were things that I was seeing as a male teaching elementary school, it was, I was just being pushed to like be in roles that I didn't love. And so to explain that, I was being pushed towards administration, and admin is just completely different than being, a classroom teacher. So I didn't love that. And I was kind of being pushed that way or directed that way. And then there was this dynamic that was going on where in elementary at that time, it just felt like challenging students would respond better to a male teacher, especially that age group. And then with only 2 classes, at buildings like Horace Mann and Elijah Buell and so on and so forth, the only option was me for the challenging students. So each year I saw my classroom, turn into a few more and more challenging kids. So that kind of pushed me out too. But in the end, there was a financial reason driving me for sure. There was the excitement of getting into a new profession. And at that time I went right into pharma sales, and I was true sales where, it fed into my competitive side, and I enjoyed that. And so there's a lot of just simple reasons as well.
Was your last year was my 5th grade year, wasn't it?
Was that it? Was it? Oh, would have been 01 to 02.
Yeah. Cause I would have finished. What did I finish at the May of 2000? Then maybe you did one more year then. Because I'm trying to think, because I remember you came to one of my Cubs games at Honeywell. You're like, I'll be at one of your games. And maybe you did do one more year.
Speaking of like your games, when you were at Horace Mann, you were probably a Chief then. Weren't the Horace Mann kids the Chiefs?
Yep.
You go back a long way as a Chief, buddy.
I know, man. But
even back then, Jeremy used to talk Steelers at my desk. Non-stop.
Yeah.
Believe that. Jeez.
Yeah, we did. And he'd always be like, Jared, like, now your Steelers are 2-0. And then we'd end up being like 2-7. We had Cordell Stewart. I would talk smack about his Bears. I forgot about that you were a Bears fan.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, we had a lot. He always had when we had to do the journal time. Remember journal time?
Oh, yeah.
And I'd have something. We'd come up there, and then I'd have some about the Steelers and he'd have some about the Bears. And, he might say something maybe mad. I'd be crying about it. And he'd be like, oh, you still crying about it? I'm like, yeah. All right, man. He's right. You think you're a big, tough football player and you're crying about it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I am. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I'm going to dispel a couple of things that like Jeremy sells on this podcast at times. First of all, he was a fantastic 5th grade student. He's smart. He was witty. He was inquisitive. He was at my desk constantly to talk, just like he is now. He loved talking sports, and he was a great kid. But I also think this, and I might be wrong, Jeremy, but I think that you were this kid too. You were the master at getting me off task while I was trying to teach to the rest of the class. And I think the rest of the class respected that and loved that about you. You'd raise your hand, and the next thing you know, we'd be off the topic of science and on something else. But he was fantastic, and he's smart too. He was a smart kid.
You told me too, because you'd say sometimes when I would do it, and he'd be up there teaching, and I try to get him, and he'd say, "Hey, you're on thin ice, buddy," and I'd be like, "Oh, all right, man. Like, hey, like,
all right, time to settle down."
Yeah. There's only 2 guys I can remember, like you and Jason Weiss. I could get him, and he'll tell you, like, if we had weightlifting class, all that, I could get him off where he wasn't talking about anything he should have been.
That's awesome. Great mention of JV too, by the way. Jason Weiss. How about those 2 creating some elite athletes there in Pleasant Valley? Their girls are phenomenal athletes. But Sarah Weiss was a good athlete too. It's not just Jason.
Yeah. I think he likes to live on. I think he played off. Did he play O-line at UNI?
I think. And she was a swimmer. I think she was a D1 swimmer, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. Better watch what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys are both, like, I would say, out of, all-time teachers or mentors, you guys are tied number 1. Like, there's no, those are some of the best times ever. 5th grade and high school is like, all right, man, you got a guy you can go talk to about anything, and probably things sometimes I probably shouldn't have been talking about. It's like, yeah, you had that bond with all the kids though. See, that was the thing. I think the stuff you were talking about, like, that kind of pushed you to, like, you didn't like those roles. I could see that then. And I kind of remember people talking about that later on, like, yeah, you just enjoyed the teaching part.
Yeah.
I think the admin stuff, it does probably push you to be like, if you're not ready for it, you don't want to be in that role. The fun gets taken out of it.
Yeah.
And you have to change.
You mentioned making connections, and I never knew that I did that then. I really didn't. It wasn't like something that I saw as intentional, but Stacy talks about it all the time. Like, that's the true spirit of education, is you first have to connect, and that's what Coach Coit does. That's what his wife, Shelby Coit, does. I've never been in Shelby's classroom, but I know that's how those teachers are so good at what they do, is making those connections and, seeing the kids outside of whatever it is you have them in your classroom for, connecting with them outside of that.
Yeah, you're not lying about that. Yeah, you definitely, that was, I'm sure there was a lot, like I said, a lot of kids beforehand, when they knew you were coming on, they're like, oh, dude, I'm jumping on to watch because he's going to be on there. I'm like, and I think, you think about that, that's 24 years ago. People don't forget that stuff. I mean, you just don't. I still remember 5th grade like it was yesterday because of the experience that I had in the classroom, and then, I mean, you obviously try to remember all the good things, and the bad things you try to, block out, but yeah,
I miss that now. I miss, like, the connections with all of the different kids. And that's why it was so cool to coach at the high school too, because I got to know a whole nother group of kids outside of, the elementary kids that I knew. But unfortunately now, you're right, it's like 25, 30 years ago. So my 6 years kind of blend together. And just like when you said, what year was I can't remember where everybody fit into all of that. But
Right. Yeah, man.
Just sitting back and listening to that though, like that, I was going to say exactly what Chad said there at the end. I mean, you're talking about 5th grade, and you're remembering, like, vivid details of like classes with Chad here, and then Clinton River Queens. I can't tell if it's wrestling or not on my end, but it says greatest 5th grade teacher of all time.
That's probably Steve Berger, isn't it?
Dylan.
He's a good. He's
But yeah,
too.
the connection part of it is in teaching and coaching is probably the top thing. You know, I mean, I think I've said it on the podcast here. Like the kids don't really care how much you know till they care how much you care about them and what you're going to do for them. So, and that's just cool that you haven't taught in 20 plus years and people are still impacted by you. So you did something right there, Mr. Delzell, and
Well,
your
you as
teaching.
well. I know two boys that can tell a lot of stories about you and moments with you and stuff. But it's so simple, the idea of making those connections, but then it gets lost in the shuffle of educating because there's so many requirements to meet. There's so much curriculum to deliver. And so it gets lost in all of that. And it's too bad because it's really the key.
I think, I agree. And I think coaching is a little easier to make. I mean, you can make connections teaching, obviously, and I do, but like coaching, I think is a little easier to make some of those connections. And one of my favorite things ever is just like seeing former athletes just anywhere, like, and just talking to them and just saying, hey, what's up? And I mean, it could be a minute conversation. It could be a 30-minute conversation. It's just one of my favorite things, so, and I don't know if all of them agree with that when they see me, but, I do for the most part. So, it's always a good thing.
Well, I would think you obviously are doing something, like you said, something right over there. I mean, with what you got for like just your football program alone. I mean, like you were saying, like the teaching part, I'm sure that's you might make a little bit of connection there, but let's be honest, like when kids are in school, like they're just kind of there because they have to be. And then like you guys are the ones that are putting you make it fun, and they have somebody they can confide in. You become more of like a life teacher, mentor for them. So I feel like, somebody like you, Coy, like obviously you're doing that. I mean, look what you've built with the football program and the kids you have out for it and all those things. I mean, so I mean, I would think, you probably don't have to really worry about that, like.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's being humble, but he doesn't have to.
Yeah, he's being very modest right now.
This isn't a podcast about me, so we don't need to talk.
Yeah, let's get back to me.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, that's kind of where we're going to head here coming up. But so we'll get into a little bit of kind of travel sports, and I know you obviously, again with Mike and C growing up and all the stuff they did. Thinking like the travel baseball, AAU basketball, whatever else was out there, kind of where were your thoughts as far as like development goes, with like the AAU travel stuff, and kind of how did you think that went with Mike and C growing up?
Well, I mean, it was a huge part of our lives, obviously. Our, like Stacy, myself, and the boys, just our whole family kind of, that was built into everything that we did. And I'll probably, make the common mistake that I'll say everything that we did right along the way, and I'll forget all the parts where we went wrong. But there were mistakes we made along the way. I think anybody that did it at the level that we did it would say that same thing, and you kind of reevaluate as you go along and you evolve and things change. And we had that happen so much. But, we had primarily positive experiences with all of the travel sports. And I know, we lump them into calling them AAU or this or that. And it's the sports that aren't affiliated with the school. Right. And we had fantastic experiences with it, but we evaluated what we were doing every year. It was all driven by the boys and what they wanted to do. But there's so many misconceptions about travel sports and youth sports, but you really just have to do what's right for your family. But then I also think, and this is the hardest part about parenting. Parenting is just a dance anyway, right? It's just a balance of doing some stuff right and some stuff wrong, and then trying to get better. But you kind of got to level set your expectations based on what you chose to do. And I'm not saying like you have to go all in and just do it at the highest level you can do it. It doesn't make sense for everybody. And there definitely are athletes that can do less of that and still have success in high school sports, right? I mean, there certainly are. And if one of your kids is that, man, you're lucky. So that's okay. You can make a little different decisions. But the other thing that I always liked about the decisions our boys made or that we all made together is they always put themselves in sort of uncomfortable positions. And I do truly believe like iron sharpens iron and a rising tide lifts all boats. So I think that if you can be in a gym or on a field with people that elevate you, it's always a good thing. It challenges you at times. I mean, there are those days where it's tough because you're around competitors that are either more mature than you or they're just better than you. And those are tough conversations sometimes, but we've had positive experiences with all of the travel sports we've done over the years, not 100% of the time. We like I said, we've made our mistakes and things like that, but it's been valuable to our family for sure. And like I said, ours kind of evolved and it just kind of crept into what we eventually did. And it started real simple, like just a couple of tournaments here and there. And baseball really got it all started for us. And then we went into basketball as well and moved on from there.
What age range did you start with C and Mike?
Well, interesting question. And I heard you guys talk about this before, like what's the right age? And I know you're going through this with Knox right now, and there really isn't a perfect answer to that. I mean, at the point where they say they want to be involved, I think you just kind of jump in with 2 feet in, but always take a step back and reevaluate things. I joke, like, so I've talked to Caleb. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mikey because he's on a bus traveling home from Mississippi from some baseball games. But I got to see Caleb Saturday night, and I said, hey, he mentioned something about this podcast. I said, if I talk about you, is there anything off limits? He's like, no, it's fine. So I always joke, like, the baseball started this way. I was outside playing catch with him. He's probably 6 years old. I don't even remember. I think he was like 6 when it all started, and playing catch, and Brian Sinkson drives by and we wave at him. He comes back by and he's like, hey, I'm putting together a travel baseball team. And he goes, I got an extra uniform. He goes, you think Caleb be interested in it? And Caleb's like, an extra uniform for yeah, I want to, I want to do that. And of course it evolved from there. He's a very good baseball player, and everything. But like, we didn't go out of our way and like get him in a tryout for a baseball team or whatever. Brian Sinkson drove by and had an extra uniform, and we were playing catch, and it worked out. And it grew from there.
That's awesome.
So I don't know that there's a perfect age. Caleb started in 3rd grade playing basketball at the Erickson Center. Mikey started in 2nd grade because they offered it to 2nd grade by the time he was there. There was parents that were willing to do it and coach, but that's kind of when it all started for us. But there was a time, like, look, Caleb's having a successful college basketball career, and I'll never forget in 8th grade, he had played, he had done our travel stuff. He had played middle school basketball, and he had played for the Iowa Barnstormers, and he's like, I'm done. In fact, he said, I wouldn't mind. There was this baseball prospect or exposure thing at Blackhawk College, and he's like, I'd like to go do that. And I'm like, yeah, let's go do that. And then he just happened to be at a tournament, I think, and somebody mentioned maybe jumping on the Iowa Mavs. And a couple months later, he's like, gosh, if you wouldn't mind, I think I want to jump back into it. So he was done with it. And, we never talked about anything. Like, we never allowed the boys to talk about what was next, sort of to talk about college sports. And I think that's one of the misconceptions about travel sports is I wasn't with a group of parents that were constantly going, God, we're doing this for a scholarship. We're doing this for that, this and that. We're doing it because we want them to play at the next level. A lot of them were just like us. Like, they just wanted their kids to have more opportunity. And that's the way to do it. That for parents like us that are able to take our kids because we have time, energy, and resources, that's the way you kind of level the playing field. And so they were just doing it like we were, nobody was talking about, we're doing this for a scholarship and this and that. So I remember Caleb finally came to us and was like, I know you guys don't want me talking about college, but I'm doing this for college now. I want to do this. And I was like, you said it out loud. So where do we go from here?
Right. Right.
But at one point, like I said, I'm done. And I said, I mean, we never stop something in the middle of a season. I think that's key to like Ryan Kincaid and I talk sports all the time, from youth sports up to high school sports and the college sports. And one of the common things that happens in college is kids go and try it, and it's tough. College sports are brutally tough, and they're mental warfare at times, and it's just challenging to stay with it. And the common vernacular we use is we're like, well, the kid went to college and quit. So Ryan and I don't try not to use that anymore. It's just a reevaluate. Like they reevaluated what they were doing. Right. And that was common in youth sports too. Like you just had to take a step back and reevaluate every year. But during the season, I think it's important once you're committed to something to finish it. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of, when you're doing a couple different sports, you can't make everything anyway. So there's going to be these moments where you take a little break because it happens naturally. Like you have too many tournaments going on, or you're going to play for your school team instead. So you have these moments where you can take breaks. But I always thought it was important when you started something to complete it. But after that, when it was over, say, hey, we got to reevaluate this when the time comes.
Yeah.
And I know you asked what age.
No,
it's hard to say. But once they show interest, I think it's good to jump 2 feet in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people do with gymnastics, dance, like I always joke with people that are like, well, your kids really took to sports. I'm like, well, I wasn't going out to the garage every night working on cars. Some dudes do that, and their kids become fantastic mechanics and things like that. So it's like kind of whatever they grew up being around. So once they show interest, it's nice to jump on it, I think.
Yeah, that really good response there. I mean, I kind of, and
I've had a lot of years to think about it and talk about it.
And I mean, that was one of the things I really wanted your input on. I don't think I've ever really had I guess that conversation with you. I've had a lot of conversations with you, but I don't know if we've ever actually talked about the AAU youth sports part of it. And Knox is really getting to that age where, I mean, he's 9, and he's really getting into sports, and the travel thing is starting to come into play in some things, and we got to determine if we're going to do it, if he wants to do it, or who, what team we're going to join, all that. But it's fun, and he wants to be a part of it. He wants to do everything sports right now, so I'm loving it. But
that's cool. And everybody kind of has a different approach to it. So I tell this example all the time. Like when I coached the Comanche class of 2020, Caleb's group in basketball, I could say the same thing for Michael's class 2022, is if we had 9 players and 9 sets of parents, and I put them an email out at the beginning of the year and said, we're going to do 6 tournaments, 6 weekend tournaments together, I would have a third of those families go, you think 6 is enough? We could use more. And a third of them would say, man, 6 is perfect. And a third of them would go, are you kidding me? We're doing 6? No way. And you need them all, and you want to make everybody, like it kind of work for everybody, but it's tough because so that's why we started to kind of branch out and take opportunities with other teams that I wasn't coaching and that weren't part of Comanche schools and stuff like that. But I will say this, one of the things that happens with youth sports that's a big challenge, and it really takes, sometimes tough decisions, and it takes a good hard look into the program that you're wanting to get into, is skill development and practice time. I mean, there's just not enough gyms available, and it's probably the same for baseball. The fields are more readily available than gyms. And I Mitch Phillips is a great example. There's just not enough gym space and gym time in Comanche. We just have so many teams wanting to take that time. And so he looked into something where his son Braden would get more skill development as well as playing tournaments, and that's something you got to look into as well. And some of these programs, even though they're big elite programs, they don't have gyms. And if you do find a program that owns their own gym, then you're paying twice the fees anyway. And so that's a challenge, and that's what you want to look into.
Well. And the other thing, and this may be you said there's a bunch of misconceptions with AAU. basketball maybe in particular, but like a lot of that is, I mean, some of those groups are great and they're awesome and they got a bunch of skill development and they're playing games and competing, but some of them are, there's not a ton of skill development, you know. They're kind of just we're gonna play 8 tournaments or whatever, or 8 weekends, and we're gonna practice once in every 2 weeks or whatever it is, or you know. So I mean, you got to make sure you're on the right team for what your skill level is too, I think. Obviously,
I think so too. Like, I'm not going to bag on any program out there, but I get a kick out of some of them, how they promote themselves and they point at players that have become elite players and maybe Division I, Division II players. And they're like, this is a player we developed in our program. I'm like, are you sure? Or did you just go get that player who had already developed on their own and they were kind of doing development on the side as well? But the program's everything. It really is. Like, we got so lucky. That's the theme of all of this for me, from youth sports on up to when we did it in high school at a little higher level, is we really got lucky with the people that we were surrounded by. And because a lot of it wasn't like intentional decision making, some of it was, but man, did we get lucky being around some of the people we were around and the programs that the kids were involved in.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask both of you guys, since you guys both, you know, obviously coach and then have kids, you know, like back in our era when AAU, there were not a lot of teams, you know, like you remember there might've been 1 or 2 teams in Clinton at the time that had AAU, and it was, you guys are talking about the skill development. And that's always been my thing with the AAU progression is, and you guys have both just said it, is that some of these AAU teams, their skill level, those kids are not ready. Like they're going in 6, 8 tournaments. They don't have the skill set. They're not actually working on it. They're just saying, well, everybody else, you know, these other teams have an AAU team, so we're going to put one together, and they don't have the skill set. They haven't developed it yet. They haven't worked on it. So then these parents pay the money, put them in there, and they're like, well, my kid didn't get any better. And it's like, yeah, but they're not even working on the skills. They're not trying to master those skills. So, you know, it's great to see, like, to get the same opportunities, but at the same time, it's like, I've seen it too, where I'm like, are you kidding me? They're on an AAU team. Like the kid can't even do a right-handed layup, you know, like those things where it's like, wouldn't you want to, as a parent, if your kid came to you truly and is like, I want to do this AAU, and you're like, okay, you're interested. But if you're like, we got to work on some things before you can get there, or you start doing that stuff on the side before you put them in it, because some of these teams, like I saw some tournaments here a couple of years ago, and I'm like, these are AAU teams. They're like, yeah. I'm like, there's no way. Like these kids can't make a right-handed layup. You have kids shooting a jump shot when they're shooting a free throw. I'm like, how is that? Are they really ready? You know, like, how do you, I guess that's the hard part. Like, are they ready? And what you guys were saying is the skill set part. Like, you would hope that the parents and then those coaches are like, all right, well, we've got to master, fine tune these skills before we put them out there against these teams that, like what you guys, you know, you're talking about with both of your boys, they mastered those skills. They were ready to play at that level.
I mean, I guess to kind of go off that thought, I'll use Knox as an example. He's 3rd grade and he loves basketball right now. So he wanted, we're in the Erickson Center League, but then he also wanted, you know, something a little more too. So I reached out to some parents. I'm like, oh, let's try to, we'll get a team together. And my initial thought was we'll get in 2 tournaments. And so I'm like, all right. And a lot of these kids never played other than an Erickson Center League. Some of them never even played an Erickson Center League. And I reached out to all 3rd grade parents. And we ended up getting 10 kids, and we only ended up doing 1 tournament because the other one was on that blizzard we had and all that snow. So it got canceled. But so my thought was like, there's a ton of options for tournaments to get into. And I'm like, these kids, once we had our first couple practices, I'm like, well, we're not ready to get in some of these tournaments, you know? So
right.
Like there was one tournament where there was a couple PV teams and a Bettendorf team and like a Cedar Rapids team. I'm like, we cannot play in those right now because we would not be ready. And we played in the local, there was Erickson Center was running a local kind of like Bellevue, Easton Valley, Northeast, Clinton. I'm like, well, those are schools our size, you know, and they were Bellevue, Northeast, they were good. And they'd played in several tournaments, but that was the first tournament we ever played in. So, were we ready? Probably not, you know, but also you gotta also kind of start somewhere, you know, kind of see where we're at, kind of see what we can do. And I mean, we got better, you know, as we moved on. We kept practicing, even though we had tournament canceled until the Erickson Center League started. And I just did it because my son wanted to do it, you know what I mean? And I figured that we'd get at least 8-10 kids in it, and we did. So, I mean, you got to start somewhere, and I'm just going to try to keep developing them, and hopefully it works out in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, Jeremy, it's complex. I mean, youth sports can be really complex, and it kind of just depends not only on what your kids want and what they're capable of doing, but then like Coach Coit was saying, you got a whole host of other kids too that are at a different level as well. And you want to find appropriate, you know, competitions for them that challenge them, but don't go overboard and, you know, you score 2 points in a game or whatever. We've been on, through the years, we've been on both sides of that. And again, I'm going to make that common human mistake where I'm just going to tell you all the stuff that we went right and all the good decisions Stacy and I made. There are a lot of bad ones along the way too. And again, you just got to take a step back and reevaluate things, and go from there.
Right.
But it is complex.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like I said, I feel like, you know, that's been the biggest change over the years. And sometimes I've seen some, I'm like, wow, you know, like I feel bad because you just want to take a kid off the side and be like, okay, you're playing against there are a lot of teams here that are at that, they've got that skill level, they've mastered it. And like, hey, you gotta be able to dribble with your left hand. You know, you gotta be able to do a left-handed layup, a right-handed layup, you know.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that, but I also think the other side of it as a parent is you got to be the biggest cheerleader too. And sometimes things become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Look, I don't think either boy will mind me saying this. I have 2 boys that are playing college sports that maybe weren't tracking at one point in their life to play college sports, in particular the sport they're in. But I also know what you're saying too, Jeremy. Like there's a side of it too. There is an ugly side of it where parents are pushing something that's beyond what their child will ever be successful at. And I don't know how to, you know, take them aside and say, hey, slow it down. Because again, as a parent, the other thing is you want to support, you know, their interests, their passions, their dreams, and all of that as well.
Yeah.
Tough.
Yeah. And I mean, I coach in, you know, middle school, high school. You see a lot of that too with, you know, you see a kid coming in his freshman year, and I mean, let's use Caleb for example. All right. See, coming in his freshman year, you know, like that he was kind of growing into his body, you know, kind of like a baby giraffe type thing, you know, and I was just like, you know, he's probably going to be decent, you know, and then he just kind of shot up, and then just a dude. And now he's playing a D2 school in Upper Iowa, averaging close to 10 points a game, you know, like, so just, I mean, I get it. You want to like make sure your kid's ready to go, but you also, just because a kid at 10 can't make a right-handed layup doesn't mean he's not going to be good. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like you gotta, and I've seen it even at the high school level. I've seen a kid come in as a freshman football player, and you're like, I don't know, you know, and then by the time he's junior or senior, you're like, oh shit, you know, like he can play, you know? So it's, I mean, they obviously got to put the work in. They got to, you know, do all that stuff, take the coaching and everything. But yeah, you can't get too crazy about skills, especially, you know, as a 9-year-old or 10-year-old. But I mean, you can kind of see certain ones where you're like, all right, yeah, this kid has it, or this kid probably won't ever have it, you know, but there's also those kids in between. But
yeah, there's kids that max out at their ability and their skill set too because of that. You know, they mature early. But this is a side story. I apologize, and I love talking about both the boys, and I love them both. They're they're cool. They're not perfect by any means, but they're growing into cool young men that I love being around. And Caleb doesn't mind us telling this story at all. But the evolution of Caleb from Stacy and I's perspective in high school is always so fun to tell, because we're just kind of, we're just at that point, we're like, our work is done. They're in your hands now. They're high school athletes. I'm not a coach. I'm just going to sit back and try to enjoy this the best I can. And so his freshman year, people would always approach us about Caleb, and because of the way he grew. He grew fast. He has like these different leverage points than most people because he's, his structure is he grew quick and stuff like that. But so his freshman year, people would say, oh man, gosh, he might be pretty good if he grows into his body. And that always means like, all right, so you're saying he's kind of awkward and clumsy right now or something,
right.
Baby giraffe.
So we were always like, we love to hear that. We're like, okay, so because Stacey and I knew what people were saying, like, oh boy, he might be good if he grows into his body. And then his sophomore year, people were like, holy cow, like he's really developing well. And then the junior year, people were like, I predict he might be the best player on this team. And then his senior year, they're like, the kid better not let us down. We better win a state title, because I'm like, 4 years ago, you were telling me you hope this kid grows into his body.
Yeah.
Now you're putting the weight of the world on his shoulders. So we always like telling that, because it was fun as parents to just kind of hear that talk, from people over the years about his development. And not everybody, like that's not just a common theme, but it was fun. We always talk about that, the old evolution of Caleb there, the way he grew.
What? How is he 6'5"? Is he 6'5"?
He's like
6'9" right now,
6'9", yeah.
Or a smidge under 6'9", but he's close to that
my
for sure.
goodness.
Yeah.
That dude literally,
Oh
I think I feel like he gets taller every time I see him. I mean,
Yeah.
like, Jesus.
I feel like he's grown a little in college too. The last time he was probably measured, I think, and if he's on, he can correct me, but they did a real solid measurement at the UNI, their camp, their camp or whatever. So because they want to know, and I think they, like in JUCO too, they didn't want to list him wrong and try to deceive colleges on how big he was. So he's listed at 6'9". He seems to be all of that, but I always think that too, quite like over the years now, nobody's measured him anymore. And I don't think, and he seems like he's growing, but he's got a 6'10" or 6'11" dude on his team. And when they line up for the national anthem, he's a little under him. So he's
huge. And he, I mean, college weight room has been pretty good to him, I think too. He's thickened out a little bit too. So
yeah.
Been good.
Well, you got it. When you're that tall, you've got all the space to grow. Like you can put on that weight and be just a machine. When you're 6 foot, once you get to a certain weight, it's like you're not really, you're just going this way. When you're 6'9", you're like, oh my God, you can put on 40, 50 pounds and just be a powerhouse.
Yeah. I mean, Kirkwood was always like their focus was just putting weight on him, to the point that even with his frame, he felt uncomfortable at times.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Now at Upper Iowa, it's great. They tell him to stay at a certain weight that he's comfortable with. So, and not that Kirkwood did it wrong. His path has been fantastic. So is Mikey's. And they've been similar, but also enough differences too. But their path has been great. It's just been a different philosophy.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. C, I was talking to him a little bit earlier too, and he just having a great year up there, and Upper Iowa is winning games. Got to be fun.
Yeah, it's been fun so far. It's been really fun, and he's having a nice season. It's been cool.
Let's talk.
By the way, I love hearing that too. Like so often I'll see people out and they're like, hey, I was just texting with Caleb or Mikey, both of them. I was just having a conversation with them. I love hearing that, man, because that's what's been cool about growing up in this community and having the coaches like you guys that they've had, is the connections that they still have, going into adult life. So it's cool. I love hearing that whenever people say that to me. I was just talking to Caleb, and I'm like, where'd you see Caleb? Like, oh, I was texting with him or whatever. Same with Michael, like I just saw Michael. I was talking to him, like a basketball game he went to, in Anamosa or whatever. And I wasn't there because he's just sneaking over from Kirkwood to see some, people. And I love that when people tell me that.
And then Mike's at Kirkwood playing baseball. I just saw I looked at the the box scores of were they in Mississippi, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah. They were in Mississippi for 4 games this weekend.
Yeah, I saw he was getting some at bats, DH in there a little bit, right?
Yeah, yep. That's where he's been. I think this week he started 1 of the 4 games, and then last week they were down in Kansas.
Okay.
And he got, I think, 2 starts there at DH as well. He's got a great story too, man. I don't know how much of it that I can tell, or how much time to put into it, but man, he's got a great story too. And it's to the point of how challenging college sports are. I mean, it's just, these kids get, transparent conversations about who they are and what people think of them. Once they decide, I want to play a college sport, and they go and try it, they get such transparent feedback that I just know some adults couldn't handle,
Right.
And he's taken it all, and I couldn't have asked for like better scenarios for either of the boys. We just absolutely love Kirkwood and the route that both of them went, and both of them have had everything laid out in front of them, right? It hasn't always been the greatest news for a kid to hear,
Right.
In Mikey's situation, they said, you may not see at bats again next year. And he took a couple weeks to think about it, talk to us about it. And, we support him no matter what he wants to do. And he said, you know what, I'm going to put my chips all in, and I'm going to go back to Cedar Rapids, live there in the summer. I'm going to work in Cedar Rapids. I'm going to work out in our facilities. I'm going to use our resources and completely dedicate myself to this. And he had an incredible summer, and now it's paying off. I mean, for him, the story's not fully written yet, but for us as parents, we're like, the results now don't mean as much to us. We would love seeing him have success, right? But what we saw him do and put himself through this summer just to get where he's at now was enough for us as parents.
Well, that just shows just the maturity and the, standing up to it, being like, yeah, I could walk away, or be like, yeah, I can prove the naysayers, the doubters wrong, and, shut them up.
We talk about that all the time too, Jeremy. I mean, Stacy and I talk about it. We hope the boys hear it as well. It's like, there's a balance there too. Like, you want to prove people wrong, but you also have this huge support group that you want to prove right,
Yeah.
And Mikey got lucky too. There's a guy on his team that, essentially took him aside and said, hey, if you want to get to the next level and get to where you want to be, this is what you have to dedicate yourself to. And he showed him the way, and Michael committed to it. And they're great buddies to this day. They're on that team together. And as parents, you're just blessed to have people in your kids' lives like that.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'll say this because I think you're too humbled to say it, Chad, but I would think Caleb and Mike's success has a lot to do with you and Stacy and how you raised them. And
100%.
I mean, I kind of look at it as, I know everyone's heard that it's from Comanche, probably knows this example, but I know there's some people listening that aren't. But Mike Delzell, your youngest, as a sophomore, he's always been a quarterback, in football, little kid, middle school, freshman year. After freshman year, I went up to him and I go, hey, what do you think about playing center? And he literally kind of just laughed at me, and I'm like, no, I'm actually being serious. Like, what do you think about playing center? And he, at first, I know he did not want to do it at all, and didn't really, it was like, didn't say no, or didn't say he wouldn't do it. But he also was like, deep down, like, absolutely not. Why would I be a center? And I'm like, well, we need a center for one. I think you can do it, because he was really good long snapper too. And we had Caleb at quarterback and Jordan Lawrence at quarterback at the time. And I didn't know. I mean, I didn't give Mike a shot. I could have, I guess, as a sophomore. And I was like, well, we need a center. I think Mike can do it. I just said it enough to him, or he's like, all right, fine, I'll be the center. And I'm like, all right, cool. So you're going to be the center. He was a center middle linebacker for us his sophomore year. And then the very next year, he's a first team All-State quarterback on a semifinal team. So I think though, like what I'm getting at is though, if he doesn't have parents like Chad and Stacy, then Mikey probably is just going to be like, no, I'm not going to do that type thing. I'll just be JV quarterback and I'll live with it being that. But he knew that's what was best for the team. He knew that was his opportunity to play varsity football, and he did it, and he did it really well. And I mean, I can't thank you guys enough for instilling that in Mike and C and all that you did for them. So it definitely was noticed by me as a coach for sure. And I know not all parents are like that. I know not all kids are like that either, but it's very nice when you have kids like that though.
I appreciate you saying that. Of course, I love the story.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you can tell me your honest opinion of what you thought of that now if you want.
Well, honestly, at the beginning of all of it, keep in mind, I just wanted to see the boys on the field. Like that was fun. It's always more fun to watch your kids play. And although I always say this too, with that, I'm like, when they're little, you grow up and everybody's like dreaming about your kid being the quarterback and all that. And we tell Buckley's this all the time because they went through it too. Like, and Kriegers went through it before us. And it's no dream world when your kid's the quarterback, like it's kind of some high stress up in the stands, but I wanted him on the field and that was his way of being on the field. And the other thing is Caleb wanted to be a quarterback as well. I know Caleb put a lot of his time and effort and energy into basketball, but he loved playing the other sports too. And funny story about football with him, was that he had come to us and told us that he wasn't going to play his freshman year. And my response was, I don't think you'll love cross country. Like, I don't think you'll like that sport. And, he's like, I got to play a sport. I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be a sport. You can be in the play, you can play an instrument, like there's other things you can do. But yeah, during that season, it's probably either football or cross country. And so you mentioned us as parents, and again, I appreciate everything you say, but anybody that's listening to this podcast knows that I'm not humble. Humility is not one of my strong suits. So I'll talk about myself anytime, but truthfully, Stacy makes this pair much better for sure. She's the one that's humble and, nice and fun and funny and smart, but he went straight, he went right to Stacy. He's like, can you believe this? Like, Dad's going to make me play football. And she, on cue, she's like, he's not going to make you play football. He just doesn't think you'll love cross country as much. And he's like, and then, I think he's probably happy he played football. We didn't force him into that by any means, but they needed to be busy doing stuff, and there's just not enough that you fill them with when they're outside of a sport. But so that sophomore year, I knew he was in the mix for quarterback too. And that might have made for an interesting dynamic at home here, Coy, to be quite honest with you. I don't know. We never had to live that. And I enjoyed watching him snap the ball to him. But in the end, if you want my honest opinion, like Mikey was getting beat up some games because, he was a sophomore. He was 15 years old. He wasn't fully, developed yet physically. And so that was a little concerning how beat up he was getting. But that's just football. So you and I have talked about this before. There's absolutely no hard feelings about that at all.
Yeah.
And I just wanted the kids to be playing. And I love the story from L&M too. Like, so Jeremy, what I got to see is when Caleb would play quarterback and Mikey was a center, I'd have one little brother snap into big brother. And I'm like, geez, I hope this doesn't go bad, and we're Wise and Muscatine, and something happens. The boys can tell this story better, but Mikey snaps the ball and the defensive player kind of gets ornery with them or whatever, and they start to go at it. And Caleb jumps out and splits the two up. And you could see it from the stands. He tells the defensive guy, like, get back in your huddle. And he grabs his little brother and he shoves him. And he goes, get back. And the official throws a flag. 15-yard penalty on Caleb for, touching the defender and throwing him back in his huddle. And for days after that, we had to hear how Mikey caused that penalty. Because Caleb was just trying to split him up from a disagreement or whatever. So
take that penalty all day long.
Yeah.
You're going to have that kind of stuff. That's just passion.
But so I want to say that I think this is a good time to say this. So that's nice. Again, that's nice of you to say, Coach Coit, and for Stacy and I, it was fun just parenting the boys through sports, but there are always challenges no matter what. But I keep a picture on my phone, and I've intentionally grabbed everybody at Mikey's graduation party to take this picture, and it's Caleb and Mike, and it's Coach Coit, Coach Grimm, Coach Davis, and Coach Cochran, right? So you got the head basketball, head football, head baseball, and the all-time, coach, the legend, Coach Grimm. And I wanted that picture. And I know it's going to sound like I'm leaving people out, because there were so many influential and impactful people at Comanche throughout the years that had such impact on our boys. But those 4 guys had the most impact and influence on our boys. And I realized this even as a young teacher, when you send your kids off to school, man, you're putting your faith in people, because they're going to be around your kids more than you get to be. Stacy and I, during their high school days, were lucky to get an hour or 2 with them a night. These guys were the most impactful and influential on them. So, I could say the same to you and Coach Davis, Coach Cochran. You really help take care of the development of those kids for sure. And I see it now. It's fun. When I talk to the boys now and they're going through challenging times, I sometimes feel like I'm completely the opposite, and they're like coaching me. So I think it was a couple weekends ago, it was last weekend. Caleb had come off a rough couple games, and the team had come off a couple of rough games, and Michael was down there getting his first opportunity to take some college at bats and stuff. And I just wanted to talk to him on Sunday. I just wanted to talk to him live. And both of them couldn't have been more mature, more confident, more like they were just talking me through everything. And I hung up and I'm like, that's the stuff I'm supposed to be saying, Caleb was just
right.
Like, man, I just trust the process. I got to stay confident, got to keep a positive attitude. Mikey the same way. I just have to keep this going and trust the process. And man, it's supposed to be me saying that. I'm sitting there like a baby. I'm like, you guys okay? You all right? Yeah, we're fine. All right, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You're fine. Trust the process.
Mature young men.
Getting there.
All right, we got a couple of comments here. We'll catch up on. Travis Baker said, "Facts. State basketball caliber teams never would have happened without the skill work taught in elementary school by guys like Chad, Whitey, Ben Irwin, etc." Zach Hudson said, "You either have it or you don't. If my kid sucks, I'm not pushing it in any sport."
I'll take it, man. Yeah.
True. This is Coach Grimm right here. He says, "It was a privilege to coach the Delzell boys. Great parents. Love y'all." Ty Tyson said, "Caleb learning fundamentals early and continuing working with the blessed height made him a nightmare matchup." And then Travis Eversmeyer said, "Love this conversation. As a varsity coach, just getting to the start of my own children's journey. This is an unbelievable perspective." And then Sean Lawrence says, "Uh-oh." I'm not sure what he's referring to on that or not, but
I think he's probably instigating something there.
Yeah, probably.
I'm sure he is instigating. I don't know if it was something one of us said, but I'm sure he'll let us know eventually. But
it's funny, to that point of there was a comment about the youth coaching that we did. It's been fun. The last few years, I don't know where this is coming from, but we're getting far more credit as dads than we ever should be getting, because it really, was about the kids. But there was, during our time, a really good group of dads that did the coaching. And the Godfather's Whitey Caesar. I mean, it all starts with the Caesars, not just Whitey, Sean and Stacy both. They really got Little Indians on the basketball side rolling. And then there's a host of families that did it for the rest. I mean, wrestling had us outnumbered by a ton. In Comanche, the first youth sport every kid tries is wrestling.
Yep.
We'd always joke and say, well, for basketball, we're just waiting for the guys that can't wrestle. Just let us know when that happens, and then we'll start a basketball team. And then you got, Brian Sinkson started the Warriors baseball, but really Ben Irwin and Dustin DeWert and those guys took it to a whole nother level. And Sean was a part of all of that too. He coached, all of the sports at the youth level. And, Shane Buck helped, him and I did that grade level together. And again, Brian Sinks and Cam's dad was a big part of some of that too. But there's been some, again, we've been lucky to be a part of it, because I only did a small part of it. I'm getting far too much credit for the youth basketball stuff. I promise you that. And I didn't even do any of the football stuff or anything like that. It's a whole group, another group of people, the Kincaids and the Eversons, they did a lot for the wrestling and the football. And I'm forgetting 20 names right now, but we're getting far too much credit. But we were lucky. We had some really, really good parents that were also good coaches.
Well, I think that, I remember, back in the day when I was in school, the culture is it's a 180 from, and you kind of remember that when you were coaching at Clinton and stuff. It was a different, and that's been one of the biggest things. And me and Coach Coit have talked about it too. I'm like, the culture change between those smaller schools from the youth, and again, like you're talking about, getting the right parents, the right coaches, the good support, at the youth level. Like, it's crazy to see the 180 change, because I'll be honest, I've said this before, Coach Coit, to you, even on here. I'm like, when we played Comanche when I was in high school, Comanche wasn't good. We played them in baseball. They weren't good. They weren't very good. They weren't very good in basketball. Now give or take, that's 18, 19 years ago. But then the way that's changed, I think it's just remarkable what you guys have done. And that's a combination of the parents and then the coaches that you have and what you guys have developed there. It's like, man, why wouldn't in that area now? That's why all those kids want to go to Comanche and Northeast, because of what you guys have built as parents and coaches. So I've said it before, it's remarkable what you guys have done on both sides. And I never saw that ever happening, because I always thought Clinton's going to be the powerhouse, and all these other small schools have to suffer. And it's like, talk about just a night and day change. And that's pretty remarkable, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
no, it's been fun. You named all the communities. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I know it happens elsewhere. It's not just Comanche.
Yep.
We've seen successful teams at DeWitt, and know a lot of those folks, and Northeast certainly, and Fulton. Fulton's got really good culture, and they're really good youth programs as well.
Yep. Yeah. I
think the youth really kind of starts with the parents a lot of times. Obviously you got your head coaches that are hopefully, instilling something into those youth programs, and a lot of them do. And usually this is successful ones do. And if you have parent support and you have parents willing to step up, like all the parents you mentioned, Chad, and I think at Comanche, and obviously I'm a little biased here, but I think we have really good overall parent support, as far as what we're doing with it. I'm like thinking football wise, because obviously I'm the head coach there. So, I've always had great parent support, and whatever we're doing, practice, whatever we're doing, off season, fundraising, whatever, like it's all been, it sounds great. Good. I'm sure, like we said, there's parents that maybe don't agree with me sometimes. Yes. But, they're not, sending me nasty emails or text or calling me or anything like that, so, that helps a lot, and that helps with successful programs too. And it also helps keep coaches here too, so if you got parents that are always, bashing the coach, maybe directly to them, they're not going to stay very long, kind of things like that. So, it's been good.
Yeah, we do. I could go on, and I'm with you, Coit. I'm biased. Again, I know this exists elsewhere in other communities, but we have unbelievable parents and unbelievable support around here. We really do. And the stuff that we're talking about that got started, what I love, if you want to point at something that's like, that is similar in all of these instances, is Whitey Caesar's story with the Little Indians. Was his oldest son, Will, was going over to Little Dribblers. And this is no bash on Little Dribblers, which existed at the Clinton YMCA then. They were just putting together a good program too.
Yep.
I'll never forget the first Saturday Whitey takes his son Will there, and I called him later. I'm like, how was it? And he goes, I gotta be honest, it wasn't great. There's 90 kids there or whatever, and there just wasn't enough help it wasn't their fault, but just too many kids with not enough help. These kids aren't going to, they're just not going to learn as much. It's kind of chaotic. I'm like, oh, what are you going to do? He's like, well, I'm getting the Comanche gym next Saturday. I'm going to start something here. So it was him. A lot of parents can take a step back and complain and, moan about things, but really it's all about solutions. So Whitey said, that was the birth of Little Indians. Him and Stacy said, we're getting a gym every Saturday. We're inviting these grade levels. And they collected $20 a kid. The jerseys cost $18. They had $2 left over for donuts, on Saturday morning. And then Whitey's a brilliant sales guy. Like he'd say to guys like me that had kids out there, he knew when to play. He's like, hey, do you think like Caleb and then Mikey want to start coming to this Little Indians? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, they're not old enough, but I'll tell you the rule that I have is if their dad's willing to coach, they can bring them. And so then we got these coaches in, and I remember, but it grew year after year after year. And second or third year in, Sean comes in with Jordan Lawrence, and he's like, "Holy cow!" And I'm like, Whitey just created this. Similar with flag football on your end, Coit. I think it was the Eversons and Brian Sinkson, and probably some Vogels thrown in there, and Kincaid's did a lot too, but they just weren't happy with what we were getting at the Erickson Center with flag football for whatever reason. Again, nothing against those are awesome people running those programs too. But instead of just pouting and moaning and whining, they just created one in Comanche. And we had one of the coolest flag football programs around. So it's just people that chose, not to sit back and complain, just do something about it.
Yeah.
And like I said, the wrestling program, the youth wrestling program, when our kids were little, was unbelievable. It was top notch.
Yeah.
Well, that's hard. Like you were saying about, solutions. I think it's pretty easy for people to complain and bring up all the negative stuff, but a lot of people, that's easy to do, but a lot of people aren't willing to put a solution into play. And I think that's just for everyday life. It's like, we can all, you can bitch, complain about stuff at your job, but if you want to fix it, you really want to fix it, you come up with a solution and go fix it. So there's changes. And I get what you're saying on the rec league, because I think that was a great program for a long time. And not that there's anything wrong with it now, but they're over the years, you got to keep stepping it up a little bit and making the changes. And it sounds like they're like with Whitey, it's just, he just took it into his own hands and said, hey, we've got to do something different so those kids can get, they can get the fundamentals, they can get the coaching that they need. And that's what you have to do, because at some point stuff's going to stop working and you got to come up with another plan to get it back to where you want to be. So yeah, that's, like I said, the command stuff, I think like I said, it's crazy. Just the 180 change over the years, and it's like, now it's like, where's the powerhouse? Comanche. Comanche is the powerhouse,
Well, I mean, yeah. Again, there was some other communities that did it well too. Like you mentioned, Travis Eversmeyer mentioned it.
Northeast for sure, 100%.
So imagine this: like Travis and Melissa are going through it now, just starting, like you are, Coit, with Knox. Like they're just starting it. That we're already at the end of. Stacy and I have been through it, and obviously with Travis and Melissa and their connection to Northeast, and us with our connection to Comanche. They never miss an opportunity when we happen to see them out there. Like, hey, we got to ask you something about youth sports and the way it went for you guys. Like, they're just always looking for ideas and always trying to do it, the best that they can do it for their world too. So I like hearing from him, having a comment, because it is fun every time we run into those guys. They're like, hey, how did you do this? How did you deal with this? What did you do after this? And that's the best way to do it. Seek advice, from people that have been through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, agree. All right, so I'll catch up on the comments here, and then we want to get into the tier talk here, Stinda.
Yeah.
All right, so Zach Cutson said, "Youth sports takes one or two great minds and a village to have a success." Mitch Van Zuden, he says, Chad taught him all the head fake elbow jumpers, especially. And then Steve Clement says, and neighbors support.
There you go, baby.
My next door neighbor. Zach Hudson, go Rebels. I'm I'll do no comment on that. And then Sean Lawrence, agree with Cadillac, knowledgeable parent coaches, but gotta admit, stringing a few years together with some freak athletes made it easy. Gotta have studs.
Yeah.
Not wrong about that either, but
we had that
definitely had
happen
some studs.
naturally. We talk about that all the time. We got lucky with 2020, 2021. That class was loaded with athletes, and 2022, they all three, and a lot of classes did along the way, but those three naturally lined up together. They all knew each other. They're all friends outside of sports and everything. And Ben, Sean, and I were able to get in Buck. Shane, like I said, we did it together at that level, and so we were always able to get the gym together. And we just made that decision again. With a lot of the decisions we made were intentional decisions, but we were kind of forced into it with lack of gym space or this and that. And listen, don't kid yourselves. We didn't just focus on skill development. We made winning a priority too, right or wrong. I hope it wasn't always the biggest priority, but with lack of time, lack of gym space, and again, trying to develop the skills that they're going to need to be successful later, we made some very intentional decisions too. You only got 60 minutes every Tuesday to get everything in.
Right.
And if my mom's listening, if Grandma Judy's listening, I always had to have a conversation with her. She's like, why aren't you guys making free throws and not turning the ball over? You need to work on that in practice. I go, well, I got 60 minits on Tuesday. I got to decide what I'm going to prioritize here. And free throws aren't always it. You got to make them,
Yeah. She's not wrong.
You got to make free throws. You got to spend some more time doing that. I'm like, I don't have 3 hours a night.
Right. Yeah.
Free throws and layups. That's what
That's
Josh
right.
Davis always said.
Them layups. Let's be honest, man.
Yeah.
I watched the Northeast Comanche game the other night, the Sub-State.
Yeah.
Up at Northeast. And man, I tell you what, I was talking to one of the guys sitting next to me. I'm like, God, you just make your layups. How many between both of them? It's like Comanche would have probably scored 65, 70 points. Who knows what Northeast? How many layups? It's like, man, you just got to you can make those bunnies. Like, it's crazy. And then they'll step back and hit a three like Steph Curry land. But it's like, man, those little layups, and you think about it, it's like, you sure after the game, they're probably like, we missed, 15 layups. It was still a good game. Imagine if you put all those in the bucket,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
the biggest headache, but
it's got to be. Yeah. That was a good game, though. Who was before we move on, who's the kid, the senior that graduated for Comanche?
Demarion Honecker.
Yeah, he was a pretty good player.
Yeah, he can play.
He moved pretty well, and he could shoot and play the post. I mean, I was impressed by him.
Yeah, he's good. Good player for sure. All right, we are going to go into our tier talk here. So, Chad, I know you have listened to the podcast before, and so our tier talk is top 3 NFL draft bust. So each one of us will share our list, and then we each give a 1-word response of the person's list. Does that make sense? Yep. So we'll do our list and then go there. Stenda, you want to lead it off?
Yeah, I will. We already you kind of talked. We wanted to make sure
we did,
Coach D. We wanted to make sure because the last couple of times me and him have had the same people. And then today he sends me a text, and we're texting. He's like, oh man, he's like, great minds think alike. I'm like, see, we're always on the same page. I'm like, he's like, maybe, and he made a good point. He goes, maybe we should switch it up. He goes, I'll change it. I go, I'll just change my list because otherwise we would have had the 3 weeks in a row. But
yeah.
All right. So I'll start from the bottom. So I'm going to go. So number 3 is I'm putting him in there. Matt Leinart. Remember Leinart?
Yeah.
He comes in. I think, he won the national championship with Reggie Bush. He's a rookie. He's like 4-7. And I think after that rookie year, Warner took over, and I don't think he ever really got back on the field. I think he bounced around, was just a backup. A lot of hype. He was the 10th overall pick, I think, in the 2006 draft, maybe. So I got him at 3. I'm gonna tie Leinart with Tim Tebow because, and here's why I say Tim Tebow, because he has a winning record in the NFL. I think he's like 8-5 as a starter. But I think the biggest thing with him coming out of college was they didn't know if he could ever take a snap under center because he took every snap in the shotgun. He either kept it or whatever. And I just don't think he, in the NFL, I mean, then they try to convert him to a tight end.
Yeah, we went to the Jets. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he was just made them a lot of money, but he's tied with Lionheart. Second, I got Brian Bosworth. Remember the Bos from Seattle?
Oh,
yeah.
He, I think I have the stats here, 87 draft. He started only 24 games in 3 years, and he took steroids, injuries, and man, he gets ran over. Remember by Bo Jackson?
Bo Jackson, yeah.
He was talking smack, dude, and you don't talk smack to Bo Jackson, man.
No.
So, and then number one, I think, I don't know where you guys are going to go with this, but I got to put Jamarcus Russell, in the 07 draft. I mean, the dude had every tangible you'd want. Big, he could run, great arm. And the guy goes to the NFL. He gets $40 million. He starts, what is his record? He started 25 games in 3 years, 18 touchdowns, 23 picks. And he didn't even watch film, and he'd have to, his teammates would entice him by giving him 10. I'm not kidding you, 10 double cheeseburgers from Wendy's for them to come over to his house so he could watch film that he never watched. So that's my list.
What's your one word, Chad?
Well, I was going to say unconventional the way it started because it was people I hadn't thought of, but now I'll just say solid. It was a solid list.
All right, I'll take that.
I'll say okay.
Well, so the list that you come up with is what I really had. So whatever, man.
Which is going to be
take
better.
Points this week.
All right, I'll go next. We'll let Chad go last here. So like all these tier talks that we've come up with, there's, obviously so many different options you could come up with, and this was another one that I had to think about a lot. But I was originally thinking like Rashawn Salam and like Curtis Enos and Cade McNown because they were Bears draft busts, I think. And I was telling Stinda earlier how excited I was when the Bears drafted Rashawn Salam, and that was when I just started getting into football when I was like 10, and he just won the Heisman, and then he has one good year and then nothing. But anyway, my number 3 would be Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Football.
He obviously in college was a freak. He played 2 years in college and had almost 10,000 yards in 2 years, like 93 touchdowns, like just insane numbers. Freshman Heisman winner, first one ever. He's number 3. He'd probably be 2 or 1, but he was the 22nd pick. So I'm thinking bust more like top 5, but but he'd be my number 3. He really didn't mean nothing in the NFL. And you guys probably maybe seen the documentary of how he just basically gave the NFL a big FU and partied. And he didn't watch any film either. Like the scene where the coach is like, he's watched 0 minutes of film, and he's like,
his iPad practice time. And he's
his
like,
iPad practice time, and he had 0 minutes. Like, that's a problem. So he'd be 3. 2, I have Jamarcus Russell. Obviously, extend a hit. Pretty much what I was going to say. Terrible record in the NFL. He was always out of shape, like upper 300 pounds coming in like his second year. The tape story was came out probably like 5 years ago. David Deal, who's a former Illinois player, he played for the Giants, and he said that the coaches would give Jamarcus blank tapes, and he would come back and talk about the blitz packages that he watched on the tapes, and the coaches were like, "Dude, these are blank. There's no blitz package." So that's obviously he didn't put the time into that, and that's why that happened. And then my number 1 is Ryan Leaf.
Leafy.
Yeah.
Woo!
He might probably go down as one of the worst NFL quarterbacks ever at that pick. He was picked number 2. He was picked behind Peyton Manning. So I have his record here. What was it? 4-17 as a starter.
Yep.
He was like less than 50% completion. He was 14 TDs, 36 interceptions, like just awful stats. He had some mental issues, and yelling at reporters and teammates, and just had a really bad bust of an NFL career. Then after his NFL career, I had some drug addiction, some crime issues, and now he's clean and he's doing like podcasts and shows and he's doing great. But yeah, he'd be my number one. What's your word?
Man.
Before I give a word, this Travis Baker, he says, Leaf, great call, Coy. Whatever. I already had him on my list, but I had to change it. So,
well, yeah, you did. No, I also had him on my list. So,
whatever. All right.
What's your word, Sten?
Coach D, you hit him with a word for it. I got to think of one here.
When it started with Johnny, I was going flashy, but now it's just strong because it has 2 of my 3 in it as well.
Oh,
so
all right.
Now it's strong.
Acceptable.
Acceptable. All right.
Okay.
All right. I'm not being nice tonight, man. I'm not feeling it. I'm going to be just.
You don't have to be. All right, your turn there, Mr. Delzell.
Instead of going 3, 2, 1, I'll go a little bit different than that. When you first texted me what the tier talk was going to be, right? Tier talk.
Yeah.
And you said like NFL draft bust. My mind immediately went to Ryan Leaf. So that makes me feel bad for him because clearly that's the first name I thought of. And he's on my list. And going in reverse order, he's number 1 on my list because he was the first name came to mind. But I did decide to just go to Google to see what other names I could come up with. And I couldn't believe this. You guys have already said it. Jamarcus Russell, I have no recollection of him being an NFL draft bust. Even with the stories you're telling, I kind of vaguely remember it. And I'm like, if he's challenging that spot, him and Ryan Leaf for number 1, he's getting off easy with me because I thought of Ryan Leaf right away and never even thought of Jamarcus Russell. So definitely Ryan Leaf. And then 2 and 3 I'll lump together because I think they're so similar. We've already said them both, but Brian Bosworth and Johnny Manziel. And I just think they were so polarizing in their college sport. They both had huge personalities. I mean, you look at Caitlin Clark today, if they had NIL money then, Johnny already made a load of money illegally on what would be legal today. So if they had NIL money, they might not even need to play professionally to retire because they would have had Caitlin Clark type money because they were just so flashy and polarizing, and their I don't know, their personalities were crazy. They're talented too.
The Boz was, I've watched his documentary. I think he blows Manziel out of the water. Like he was a psycho.
Yeah.
Like he was doing crazy stuff in college, like beyond what? I think if he probably wasn't roid raging, I think that's kind of what hurt him the most. Like, dude, you probably need to lay off of that because I think who was his coach? Was it Barry Switzer?
Yeah, that sounds right?
In Oklahoma, yeah, it was.
And Switzer would go to him and he's like, dude, you need to get off the steroids. And he'd be like, yeah, I'll get off of them. And then he would Switzer would drug test him. And he'd be like, no, you're not off of them. Dude, let's get off the roids, man. Like, come on.
Yeah, he was on that. What's your word, Stenda?
I'm going to say respectable.
See, he's going to be kind to me. He's going to be kind to me.
I got it, the Coach D.
Former teacher.
I'm going to say groovy because they're all druggies.
And they did a different variety of drugs.
Yeah.
Like all your guests have said, though, that was fun looking that up and just kind of Googling a little bit and looking into it. That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, the tier talk's fun. We like getting in with that. So
yeah, it's always good. It's good to stir the pot.
That's right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
All right. JP, you got anything else for Chad?
No, I do. And then
go ahead. Yeah.
I wanted to, so Coach D, I had I couldn't, there's no way for me to post the picture on this thread. It wouldn't let me do it.
All right. That's
So
all right.
I'm going to send it to you after this, but it was the letter that you wrote to us. So this was in 2000, and it was a memory message to you. It says, "Dear fifth graders, you have made this school year memorable not only because you are the first class of the new millennium, but also because you are a spectacular class. It has been a fantastic year filled with lots of memories. I've enjoyed sharing each and every one of them with all of you. I hope I have given you enough stories, jokes, and sayings to last you a lifetime. I will miss you. Thank you for making this a terrific year for me. Sincerely, Mr. D." And I still have that. And I found Eric Bruckner sent this to me. So I came home while I was working. I'm like, I know I have that. And I went back and I keep this tub of stuff I kept from, way back in the day, sports, whatever. And it was sitting at the bottom, stuffed under one of my yearbooks. And I still have it sitting there. So,
Oh, man.
yeah. And
Teacher of the year right there.
yeah, like I told Coach Grimm, I said, it was a long time ago, but a lasting impression of what you were able to do for me as a kid and the direction, because I could have gone. I think you know this. I was a kid that could have very well gone a different path. Very well. I could have easily been steered towards things I never should have been, into. And if it wasn't for people like yourself, Coach Grimm, Vice, those guys, I don't think I'd be sitting here today. So I definitely owe a lot of where I'm at today because of people like yourself. So I just wanted you to know that. So,
Well, I appreciate that. You know that. And I think you also know, I think the world of you as a student, when you were a fifth grade student. I know what you're saying about, potentially going in a different path. And that's why when Stacy and I talk about you and other people like you, a lot of kids would use their circumstances as an excuse to go a different direction. And there are plenty of examples out there like you of people who don't. And,
right.
Stand up and do the right thing and go the right path. And so I appreciate that.
Yep. You the man, you know that. Best fifth grade teacher ever.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
All right. Thanks again, Chad, for coming on. Appreciate it.
No, thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's been so fun.
Yeah. Make sure to follow our page, and we're signing off. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
Adios. We'll see you, Coach D. Coach
All
Coy.
right.